Hi, and welcome to $1 Million Monday, which has now been $100 Million Monday, and I'll tell you why. I was talking to a friend of mine, Dr. Patrick Flynn, recently, and he was saying that he saw where a millionaire is becoming the new middle class. And I can tell you, I know that sounds kind of crazy, but just look at it. If you're buying the new iPhone for $1,400, if you want all the latest Apple equipment, if you've got a nice car, if you have a big house, if your kids go to private school, you'll burn through $1 million really, really fast. In fact, with the way things are going, if you're going to keep up with the Joneses and all the latest technology, a millionaire really is quickly becoming the lower middle class. So hopefully you've watched some of our other videos and you keep up with what we're teaching at the 0 to Million Institute, because we talk about living within your means, managing consumption, and putting away that $500 a month so you do become a millionaire and end up in a place where you are affluent and comfortable. But the reality is we are running into a place in time where it really, if you want to be wealthy, it's not enough to have $1 million anymore. So there are two irreducible minimums to the 100 millionaire mindset. I just want to say, whether you're chasing 100,000, 500,000, million, or millions, or hundreds of millions, or maybe even $1 billion. A friend of mine, one of my best friends in the whole world, Brett Penniger, he tells me he's going to be a billionaire. So maybe, and we talked about the news show being, or the new book, 0 to $1 billion. So whatever you're chasing down here, there still are two irreducible minimums when it comes to the right mindset. The first one, and I want to share with you two today, we're going to talk about taking on what you're hating on. Taking on what you're hating on, another important principle to the mindset that we're teaching. So first principle, first irreducible minimum, the contrast principle. Early on, I had grown a big practice. And as a result, I had only been in practice a few months, and I was asked to speak somewhere. And while I was there, I felt like a pretty big deal, because I had a practice bigger than most people who had been in practice for many, many more years than me. It was just a few months for me, and the other people, some of them have been around for decades. And so I felt like a big deal. Then I had a patient come in who was a billionaire, and he invited me to a party. And I don't know if you've ever been in this situation, and I don't know if you know what this is like, but I was the poorest guy in the room, or girl. Everybody was richer than me. And when you're in that situation, you have two choices that are really important. The first choice is just feeling bad about yourself and wanting to go home. The second choice is you can learn and know that you have a lot of growing to do. And to this day, I'll tell you, I still live in that room. I still know there's a lot to learn, and I have a lot of growing to do to be like one of those 100 millionaires, the billionaires I was in the room with at that party. Be careful who you're contrasting yourself to. I've run into a lot of people who think they've arrived because they've surpassed sort of the conventional or the traditional or the average. And you know what? If you think you have arrived, you probably have, but you haven't. And you want to keep going. So this first rule is important. Who are you contrasting yourself to? The second one, and it's close to it, it's all about the model. It's all about your model. You know, in past companies, past things I've owned, I've had a model that hit a ceiling, and some of those companies grew quite large. But if I stuck to that model, they could not have grown much larger. And in fact, really, we had hit a ceiling and started coming down. We can often become tightly tied to a model because it's the one we know, it's the one we're accustomed to, and it's based on our experiences. So this gets back to who you're hanging around with and which models you'll investigate. So I began to investigate people who didn't hit their ceiling at 10, 20, 30 million, but people who have bought things and sold things for hundreds of millions or even billions. And what I recognized in spending time with them and learning from them is what was radically different was not so much that they're got genius IQs or had such a better business, but they had such a better model than mine. In fact, this year I've traveled all over the country just to spend time with people who had a great model. I'll ask people, will you give me just an hour, 2 hours a day or more just so I can learn your model. And what I've managed to do is throw out a lot of my models as to how I ran different parts of my business and my life to take on their model, because I know, for example, one particular gentleman, he does something very close to what I do now, but he sold that company for $250 million, which means I needed to throw my model out because he's not only a 100 millionaire, he's a 250 millionaire. And guess what? He's doing it again, only bigger. This takes me to the final part, which is taking on what you're hating on. Taking on what you're hating on. When I stuck again at my model and went to the $250 million model from this other gentleman, there are things I was going to have to start taking on. There are things I was going to have to get rid of that would be very uncomfortable, stuff that I would kind of hate to do. But I realized in order to break through my iron ceiling, I needed to listen and throw out a lot of what I'm accustomed to from my past, things that I thought were brilliant based on my experiences. And it's very difficult to do. And here's a quick just sort of a metaphor, kind of simple, but my daughter likes to go to hot yoga. Now, I've been a few times, and I hate hot yoga. I have bad balance. I am not very flexible. And when you're fighting your own body, and it's like 380 degrees in there, and you're pouring out sweat, you just at some point are like, I am not enjoying myself. But what I do like doing is spending that 80 minutes with my daughter and sort of getting through something difficult with her. It's an enormous experience for me. Now, it makes me better physically, it makes me better mentally, and it makes me a better dad and somebody who's more fulfilled because I get to spend time with my teenage daughter. So what I call that is taking on what you're hating on. It makes me better. You're a better person for doing it, and it can blast you far further into your future than you can ever do by only doing things you're comfortable with. So whether it's the contrast mindset, all about the model, or doing what you hate, I hope you take these things on, because all of us who are watching today, we all do have a ceiling. We all live in a small room if we don't. These really are irreducible minimums, and I don't want you to have arrived. I want you to keep going. I want you to be everything that God intended you to be. I want you to be all you can be and more. I want you to add extra zeros to what your potential is today. I want you to exceed your potential, and these are just really minimums to doing so. Bless you in your mission-based business, and remember who you are.